we still would rather have been like them because the message was Nellie and Joe were awful. You fast forward though to Hannah Montana and the things that kids are consuming today, even Sophia the First, and who is now portrayed as the heroine would have been the antagonist in the past. So they are being, the reaffirmment, relational aggression is being reaffirmed in what they are consuming. So where is the counter to that message? How do we shape a more pro-social response in our girls? Because it really hasn't changed with boys. Physical aggression isn't acceptable, right? We still teach that. We can still teach straight to that boys know very early. It's not okay. But girls, a lot of the modeling, when we talk about social media, that's going to come into play. So let's look at just the basic differences. We're going to look at 4 basic differences between the male and female brain, and how that might impact the behaviors that you're seeing with your kids. So there's 4 primary areas in neuroscience that we look at that are different between the male brain and the female brain. And again, this is just in the composition of the brain. Keep in mind that everything we're going to talk about here, the male brain is larger than the female brain. So everything is taken into consideration based on that mass and the differences in mass, okay? Okay, so one of the first differences we're going to look at is in processing. So the male brain has 7 times more gray matter than the female brain. When you think about gray matter is what allows you to analyze something and act. This is why with our boys, sometimes we think that it's kind of like tunnel vision. Because what they do is they really focus on one thing, and then they're going to take action, okay? So this might be when you're having a conversation with a son or a spouse, and they're watching, or they're playing a video game, or they're watching a game, or maybe in the classroom they're doing a math worksheet, doing something. They're engaged in an activity, and you're having a conversation with them, and it appears that they are in tune to the conversation. And then at the end of it, you say, "So, are you going to go ahead and do that?" What? Well, what we were just talking about. Oh, I didn't hear you. What do you mean you didn't hear me? I was thinking about something else. Huh. That's that gray matter. They're going to focus on one thing. This is why our boys aren't really great at multitasking. Okay? This is why we need to be careful in how we give instructions to our boys. Because depending on the studies that you look at, 83 to 87% of teachers are female, so we're processing out of a female brain mindset, and I would probably say 99.9% of moms are female. And so when we talk to our boys, we have to remember they don't process the same way that the female brain does. With boys, generally, if you give them a list of instructions, they're going to hear the first thing or the last thing. So if in the classroom you say something like, the instructions are given like, all right, I want you all to take out your math homework. Go ahead, put your math book on the corner of your desk, pass your paper over to the left, take out your red pen, and once we're done correcting, I want you to go ahead and pass those up to the front. Person at the front, go ahead and put that up on my desk, and then the rest of you put your math books away. Okay, well, the average male brain heard the first thing, which was take your math book out and put it on the corner of your desk, or they heard put your math book in your backpack. Okay? And they're going to do that. And so they're going to take so if the first they take it out, and then they look at everyone else, like, what are you doing? Why are you doing all that? Right? Because they didn't hear the rest, or they're out of their seat over their backpack, and what do? All right, you know what? You're being disobedient. You need to follow instructions, get back in your seat. So we discipline them without taking sometimes into consideration, in all honesty, that's what they heard. Same thing at home. They miss all those middle instructions. As compared to the female brain has about 10 times more white matter. White matter is like the newest, greatest Dell operating system. It is your information processing center. It is always being updated. It is like the best air traffic control tower in the world. And so the female brain is constantly making connections, putting things together, making those connections amongst things. And this is why female brain is pretty good at multitasking. Because the female brain has hired a secretary. We call this executive functioning. So the female brain went out, wrote a job description, hired a secretary. The secretary is fabulous. She never takes a day off. She comes in early. She stays late. She color codes everything. She uses sticky notes. She has a checklist. And so she keeps that female brain working. The male brain probably hasn't even considered hiring a secretary yet. If they have, they didn't make a job description, and what they were looking for was something very different than the executive functioning that the female brain has hired. Okay? So very different in the processing. All right, so how does this play out in their friendships? This comes from a study called Jack's Brain, Jill's Brain. And I will just disclose, I disagree with this first one, but I put it up here because this is what the research showed. This was the summary. So they say friendships among girls generally good among 2 to 3 girls. I disagree. I think girls don't do well in odd numbers. I call that the fearsome threesome. Also has been referred to as the toxic triangle. Girls don't do well in odd numbers. So I would change this to 2 to 4. 2 or 4. Not 2 or 3, 2 or 4. But boys, on the other hand, they can have 2, 12, 24, 54. Fine. Here's why. Female friendships focus on one another. The sole focus of the friendship is you and me. We're sharing everything. We are equally invested. Friendship is between females, is very personal, it requires a lot of energy, a lot of resource. This is why it's difficult for females to have more than a couple very good friends, okay? Because it requires a lot of energy. Male friendships, however, generally focus on an activity, hobby, shared interest. They get together to do something. Remember, the action part of the brain, okay? They get together to do something, so there can be bazillions of us, right? We can all be playing this game and we're all friends. The Kaiser Family Foundation did a study. Boys, we're talking about how boys and girls use technology differently. Boys use technology based on what their brain says, right? Action. They're going to do something. They're going to talk. Okay? So again, their friendship is more around activities. So there can be bigger groups. Games and sports generally with female friendships is just an excuse to get together. It's an excuse to socialize. Whereas boys, it is central. It is key. Games and sports are key to their friendship. We experienced this with our son and daughters. Our girls both played volleyball. They both played club volleyball. And when it would be time to try out for a new team, what was always the number one question before getting in the car to go try out? Who's on the team? Who else is trying out? They've already figured out who of their friends are going to try out for what team, and that's where they're going to go. Never once did they ask, is it a winning team? We didn't care about that. Or is it going to make me a better player? It's going to improve my skills. Didn't ask that either. Just who's on the team. My son, on the other hand, played basketball completely different. Number one question, when it's time to try out, do they win? Yes. Do they win? Who's the coach? So is it going to make him more competitive? Will he be more competitive? And then the only reason that he would care about who else was trying out is because he's assessing their skill, like if they're good enough in his mind, right? Didn't matter, the friendship part of it. The friendship part would come from the activity. When we talk about conversation in female friendships is central. Very important, lots of words. Conversation in male friendships, not so much. Okay? So think about, you have a media center in your house, all the best gaming equipment, gaming system, newest games. You put the girls up there, you shut the door, you come back 10 minutes later, you put your ear to the door, what do you hear? Talking, cackling, laughing, talking, okay? Now move the girls out, put the boys in. The game system probably hasn't even been turned on, by the way. Take the girls out, put the boys in, come back 10 minutes later, ear to the door, what do you hear? You hear things like, oh, dude, oh, no, right? Very different use of words. Okay, hierarchies I'm going to talk about just for a second. Hear this. Hierarchies in female friendships is poison. Absolute poison. The minute you start to see hierarchies evolve in female friendships, you know there's a problem. Something is wrong. Because girls need to feel, so don't misunderstand, this doesn't mean that they all have the same strengths. Like you might have one girl that has more leadership qualities, one girl that has more of a servant's heart. You know, you can have different strengths, but what I'm saying is you are all equally appreciated. You have equal voice in that friendship, okay? Boys, not as important. Boys are okay with having a team captain. They're more okay with having the team leader. Hierarchies aren't as detrimental in male friendships as they are in female friendships. So I'm telling you, you start to see those hierarchies evolve in female friendships, there's a problem. Girls need to have the equal voice. And then finally, self-revelation in female friendships, that's a badge of honor. So when I share my deepest, darkest with you, you're going to share your deepest, darkest with me, and that brings us closer together. It's very important for female friendships. Boys, again, not so much, right? One boy starts sharing his deepest, darkest with the other, and he's like, dude, seriously. No. Okay? They're not going to go there naturally. All right, any thoughts or questions? We're going to touch on social media and how this brain function affects their use of media. Yeah?
I mean, I noticed the difference, like you were speaking about girls starting very young with the kind of like pulling of the emotional, social language. And so I just found myself this week speaking to my 7-year-old about the difference of being kind, but also needing to be assertive.
Yes.
So it's kind of interesting how, it's coming out.
Helping her find that voice. Good. Good. Yeah.
What would you tell us about bringing a girl back to joy from that rumination? Because, I get that all the time, and my
Yes.
house is different things that happen, or kind of disappointed,
Yes.
something at the youth group, and I'll say, do you want me to help you get out of that? And if she's not ready, it's not
Yeah.
going to happen. I
Right.
hear it takes about 90 seconds to pull the brain out of that, if
Right.
they'll let us.
Right.
How do you do it?
Yeah. So again, having those conversations, giving them strategies. So when you start to feel these big emotions, what can you do about it? Give them some of those self-control strategies, maybe some breathing tips, just giving them some ideas of what to do, and also to change that inner voice. What can you say to yourself, right? And so that's where we look at knowing what is true, what is honest, those kinds of things that you want to replay, you want to change that script. And again, with girls, because it's so language-based, we need to oftentimes go to the words. What can you say instead? Okay? How can we change that voice in your head? Yeah. But again, giving her that vision, it doesn't happen overnight. It is a process. It's a developmental process, right? And it's a maturity process. Yeah.
And just a quick question on the hugs you were saying. I know that you're saying that that's a realistic thing, that when you hug the girls, it releases a good feeling. And what about the boys? Is that just not it's just a hug?
No, it is important for the boys as well. Their brain just doesn't release that oxytocin at the same levels. They do it later. Boys are going to release more dopamine. And so that hug with a boy is going to probably reduce more of the dopamine than it is the oxytocin. Okay? Yeah, just different. The male brain does release oxytocin, but it's later, much later in development, and it's it's with a more stable relationship. All right, so social media. Now keep in mind, we talked about the importance of words with our girls. Any female, to some degree, is craving a certain amount of verbal affirmation. Dr. Terry Rosemary Wong, education researchers, they did a study and found on average American parents spend about 12 minutes a day talking to their kids. 12 minutes. So evaluate how much you're actually talking to your own child and where you fall on that. But our kids, that we see them going to social media, it's going to be primarily girls, because what are girls trying to do? Build relationships, use their words to build relationships, solidify relationships. What are boys going to use technology for? Games. Okay, so different needs in regards to social media. And so this is why you see these girls, but keep in perspective, these girls need a certain amount of verbal affirmation. If they're not getting it in that 12 minutes a day at home, if they're not getting it at school, they're not getting it in their friendships, they're going to go to the screen, because the screen is what they're most comfortable with, right? We are raising our first generation of screenagers, unfortunately. Kids that on average have spent more time in front of a screen than in human-to-human contact, okay? Kaiser Family Foundation did a study last year. On average, kids ages 7 to 18 spend about 9 hours a day in front of a screen. Okay? All right, some sort of a device. And I tell you, emotions aren't learned through emojis, only through human contact. So if you have a young lady needs this verbal affirmation, not getting it anywhere, where is she going to go? Online. She's going to go to the screen because that's where she's comfortable. And what is verbal affirmation online? Likes and friends. Now, just the nature of the beast of social media. If your whole desire is likes or affirmation, generally it's the negative things that get the most likes, that get the most comments. When you post something hurtful or harmful, you're going to get the most likes. Okay, so keep that kind of in perspective.
Do you think that's more like a middle school girl?
That
Would do that?
any female that is using social media for verbal affirmation, for their sole affirmation, is going to go negative. Yeah. Because what do you have to do in order to get all those likes? You either have to say something nasty or snarky about someone else, and then everyone's going to jump in on that, because that just, again, it's the nature of social media, it's the nature of the beast, it's the negative stuff that's going to get the most attention. Or you're going to post something that's maybe self-harmful, like nude or semi-nude photos of yourself. You should get more likes for that. Not because necessarily you're comfortable with your body image, but because you want likes. And you can get them that way. Okay. So again, girls use it more than boys. Again, we're looking at the correlation of depression and the amount of time on media. And here's the point that I want to make here, and it kind of feeds into, we talked about the intimacy, but the Facebook piece. Here's what happens with these girls that are spending lots and lots and lots of time consuming social media. The thing about Facebook, and we call it Fakebook at our house, because there's nothing real on Facebook. It's not reality. Now remember, our kids are the farthest away from the rational thought, so we have to be their surrogate prefrontal cortex. We have to keep things in perspective for them. It's our job. What's being posted on Facebook isn't real, right? And I can say this from experience. We went on vacation this summer, okay? We went to Colorado. We had to drive 3 hours in the car, lots of really close time, to go do a zip line. My girls did not post on their Facebook page the fact that we threatened to kill them on the way, and we told them to act like adults because they were acting like children in the back seat, and keep your hands to yourselves. Hello, you're 17, 20, and 22. Can you please act appropriately? Okay, none of that hit the Facebook page. You know what did hit Facebook? The staged photos in front when we were all in our zipline gear and we all looked great, and we had to take like 18 pictures until everyone agreed that their smile and their body style, everything was okay. That is what goes on Facebook. Real life doesn't go on Facebook, right? So if you have a child who doesn't have real great rational thought anyway, perspective of reality, like I go on Facebook, I know it's fake. Our kids don't. So they go on there and so the amount of time that they spend on there looking at everyone else's perfect life. And their life isn't perfect because mom just threatened to kill them in the car. They didn't behave, okay? And they're looking at everyone else's life as perfect. Can lead to lower personal life satisfaction, which can lead to depression and anxiety. Again, it's easier to be cruel online, again with girls especially, because we don't have to see the response that it elicits. Remember I talked about the sensory portion of the brain. We process other people's emotions as well when we're face to face. We don't want to say something that's going to make you cry right in front of me. I don't want to deal with that, okay? But I can go online and do it. When we start to take technology away from our kids, if you haven't had boundaries around your technology, be prepared for significant withdrawal. You want to see the screaming and gnashing of teeth, take away a teenager's phone, take away their device if they're not used to it. Just be prepared, because then it is important. It is important to set those boundaries around their social media and their use. So I talk about if we want more time, if we want more positive time with our kids, there's a little formula. First, we have to spend time talking with them. Face-to-face, engage in conversation about things they like, even if we don't care at all. Like I didn't care at all about Pokemon when my son was growing up, but I would talk with him about Pokemon, and now I just beat the heck out of him on Pokemon Go, which was a lot of fun as an adult, right? No, but again, you spend that time talking with them about what's important to them, because then it gives you the opportunity to instruct. We set that baseline of having conversations and spending time, in conversation, then we're able to better instruct. Set your boundaries. Be very clear, okay, of what your boundaries are. If it's about social media, for example, our house, they had to turn their phones in at 9 o'clock every night. If they didn't turn it in on their own, if they had to be reminded that, but they weren't responsible enough to have that device the next day. Not my responsibility to remind you. You know, one of the things you said you had to have on that phone was an alarm, so you better set that alarm so you get it in my bedroom by 9 o'clock. That's being responsible and following the rules. So set some of those boundaries, but then make sure you monitor. Monitoring is key. And so many times, this is where we'll talk and we'll instruct. We'll talk and we'll instruct. And we'll talk and we'll instruct, but we forget to monitor. Okay? Example of this, I might say something I have. Y'all can go once your room's clean. Get your room picked up and then you're free to go. And so I'm in the kitchen doing whatever and they come, okay mom, we're leaving. Are your rooms clean? Yeah, okay. I keep doing what I'm doing and then a little bit later I walk down to the bathroom and I walk past their rooms. I'm like, are you kidding me? Well, that was my fault. I didn't monitor. I took the word of an adolescent. Never a good idea. Okay? So make sure you monitor. And then finally, encourage. And encourage means not just because they do something perfectly, but maybe they at least try. Okay? So encourage so that they'll continue to try, continue to take those risks. We know Gottman's research says that in healthy relationships, and he's about 98% successful in predicting if marriages are going to end in divorce, or relationships are going to end in a split. And what he looks at is the amount of praise and encouragement compared to the amount of correction or negative talk. And what he looks for healthy, the most healthy marriages or healthy partnerships is an 8-to-1. 8 praise statements or encouraging statements for every one correction or negative. We need to apply that same thing to our kids. We need to make sure we're filling their buckets. We're praising them, encouraging them around the things that they are doing well. Okay? All right. Covered a lot. I said I wasn't going to go over, and I did again.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
On the monitoring, I have older girls and I have a middle school son, so, it was easy to monitor them because, I made them be my friend, whatever, but
Yeah.
now I'm hearing that, the kids are making fake accounts and parents don't know about, and,
Yeah.
are there, programs, I know?
There are some, they're always changing because the media is always changing. So, or the platforms are changing. So go out and you can do a search and those good ones will come out. Awarity is one that I'm familiar with. Aware, AWAREITY, is one that is kind of a tracking program. But yeah, just kind of being
Do you
aware.
encourage those, or do you think that that's like privacy or not good for the relationship?
Now, I definitely don't think it's an invasion of privacy, right? There is nothing private on there.
You hear people say, oh, you
No.
can't do that,
No. And that is, so we think about, because we are very quick, and I have a lot of parents say that, and these devices are nothing like our old diaries, right? So our old diaries, remember, that had the little gold lock and the little gold key, and we would hide the key in one place, and we'd hide the diary someplace else, because the purpose of that was for our own personal thoughts. It was never intended for anyone else to read, right? Our devices are public and permanent. Every single thing that happens on here is to communicate with someone else. And if you're going to communicate it to someone else, my opinion is the person that gave you birth certainly can see it. It wasn't meant to be secret or private. There's nothing private and personal on a device. Everything is public and permanent. And so if my job is to help shape you into a healthy, contributing member of society, part of that is helping you to use your communication effectively.
You think that applies all the way through high school?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I tell you, my daughter, when she turned 18 in May, and she didn't go to college until August, and we still made her turn in her phone at 10 o'clock during the week and 11 o'clock on the weekends, and we still were able to spot check. She said, I'm an adult, I am 18. Oh, well then you get to be an adult in everything in life, right? You get to pay your bills, you get to move out, you get to pay for your college, or you keep following the rules, because that's our rule for social media. And they're still kids, honestly.
No, I get that, but you get a lot of lashback,
Yeah, you do.
Say,
Yeah, you absolutely, you absolutely do, yeah.
There are a lot of businesses that actually search the
Yes, they
internet
do.
before they hire you and let you go to school.
They do.
So
Yeah.
Mom, email.
We had a friend's son that lost a college scholarship, a sports scholarship, because he posted something on graduation. Shouldn't have done.
It's not private.
No, it's not at all private. Yeah, and usually you're paying for it. That's another, yeah.
How do you handle Snapchat?
Yeah, follow them and have those boundaries. Same thing, conversations. And
Well, Snapchat.
you have to be on it. You have to be on the same.
Well, if I see that they have a message, as soon as
Right.
I open that message, it's gone. So then how do you monitor it?
You have to use one of those monitoring software.
Even with
Yeah.
Snapchat?
Yeah.
And the other thing on, Snapchat, they can send their friends a whole bunch of stuff
Right.
they don't put in their story.
Well,
And
yeah.
they have
You'll
Snapchat
notice
too that can
too.
capture
That's
those things.
it.
Yeah.
What's it called?
Snapcap.
And what will that do?
It'll capture those Snapchat stories. The photo itself. Yeah. It's a big job. It is the biggest parenting challenge by far, I think. Yeah.
When you were talking about the difference between boys and girls grades, and you used the example of a boy in math class going through all different steps and how he doesn't go through the different steps, and then it's like you have your own issue. How do you help with that? How do you fix that?
Try to chunk and just be aware of it. Again, we as females are naturally going to give lots of instructions, so we need to have a little more self-awareness of how we're setting those things up. The interesting thing is that if we use effective strategies that help boys learn, it also helps girls learn. But when we use strategies that are really geared towards girls, it can be detrimental for our boys. So again, it's just kind of being, again, awareness. It's just awareness, understanding.
For our spouses that may not be here this morning, we could have a lecture on TED or where we can.
But I videoed it, so
Oh, okay.
somehow I can give you access.
Oh, about this?
Yeah.
I was going to email out the slideshow to everybody, but if you didn't RSVP, I don't have your attendance here, so I left a piece of paper out, and if you could just write your name and email address, I'll make sure it gets to everybody so that you have the slides. And there's also a great, she's showing the kids a great video that I'll attach to that I think you'll enjoy seeing too.
Do you break out with the boys and girls differently?
Sometimes, not always.
With them yesterday?
Yeah.
Yes.
8th grade yesterday.
That's a perfect example because I have an 8th grade boy and he didn't tell me when I was asking about his day. He didn't
Yeah.
tell me.
Yeah.
My daughter did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you see a problem just not giving them a phone?
Do I see a problem with that?
Yeah.
No. I don't. Now, I will say probably 14, 15, 16, because my goal always is to help shape my kids' behaviors while I have a chance to, so I would rather them make mistakes with me. I'd rather me guide them through the learning process than wait till they're in college and then say, okay, here you go, and not have any of that time to teach what's appropriate and what's not appropriate.
For the 8th grade presentation you did yesterday, was there anything that was kind of enlightening that they might have said that would help us, have a perspective?
We talked primarily on how words affect us, and so we talked about words that hurt and words that build, so words that harm and words that heal. We did a couple of activities about that, and then we talked about social media and how friendships don't happen online. That true friendships are built through shared experience, spending time with one another. It's the face-to-face time, and so the primary goal was really just to get them to evaluate how they're using social media and how they're using their words. I only have 30 minutes. Yeah.
Is there any, I wouldn't say damage, but if they don't use any of the social media?
Damage?
Or the friends that are using social media online are not using?
But at some point, I do think, like I said before, we need to be the ones to teach them how to use it effectively, how to teach them to use it appropriately. I firmly believe it's always, your parents know kids better than anyone else. So you need to determine when it's appropriate, what age is appropriate. And again, social media isn't the problem. I think it's having those boundaries, teaching kids to use it. So what are your boundaries ahead of time? Just like when you give them a car, right? Like you start at age 15, they don't get to be in the car by themselves. They have to drive a certain number of hours before they can even take the test, and then they take the test, and then In Texas, you can only have, for the first year, you can only have one person in your car, and you can't drive past 10 o'clock. So there's rules there, right? Those are like government rules, but then there are rules in the family as well. Like you can only drive this far, we don't let you drive into the city, you can only drive this parameter. And then that's where the phone comes in really handy because you can track them at all times. So if you say that you're going straight over to Emily's house, just know, I'm gonna make sure that you're over at Emily's house. We track your phone. So again, just like we wouldn't give them a car, I feel the same way about technology.
You have to be careful that you know that, like, some kids will tell you they're not on it, but they might, you know, not saying yours,